This year is a pretty special crop of new bikes, and right at the top of that newness is the Honda CRF 450R. What do you think about the Honda? What's your initial take on the Honda CRF 450R?
Or did you see me out there? Watch the video. Enough said.
Ever wonder which OEM produces the best 450cc motocross machine? There's always only one way to find out. Get them together on the track and ride them until you're sure. For 2017, we knew this battle for supremacy would be closer than ever after Honda released its all-new CRF 450R with just one mission in mind: to go to the head of the class. But not so fast. Both the KTM 450 SXF and the Husqvarna FC 450 have been knocking on, and sometimes knocking down, the door to top honors in the 450 class. And Yamaha's YZ 450F, Kawasaki's KX 450F, and Suzuki's RMZ 450 have done their part to up the ante in the 450cc arms race as well. So we grabbed a hold of these moto warriors and pitted them against each other, soliciting the opinions of a variety of test riders along the way. 6 bikes, but only one winner. Honda pulled out all the stops to get back to the head of the class with the 2017 CRF 450R, and it's the strongest feeling 450 Big Red has ever produced. The latest version of Honda's long-standing Unicam single boasts a new downdraft intake layout along with a new cylinder head, a higher compression piston, and a revised exhaust system to give the 2017 CRF a snappy and fun power character. This potent new engine is cradled in Honda's 6th generation aluminum perimeter chassis, which has been completely revamped for a lower center of gravity. And the CRF 450R also rides on all new suspension. The 17 model does away with the air fork and replaces it with a 49mm Showa coil spring fork housing race kit internals. Out back, a revised ProLink suspension places the CRF's shock lower in the chassis for improved handling.
Well, I think people will like everything about it, honestly. It's it's an all new bike in 2017. It's actually a night and day difference from their 2016 bike. So, I mean, just the motor alone, it's got really good power this year and a really smooth power. So it's good for every rider out there. Also, what surprised me is how good it handled. And Hondas have always been good at cornering, so it still keeps that characteristic. I'm a fan of the spring fork, and I haven't been a fan of the air fork since they came out, honestly. So I think they made a good move by bringing the spring fork back, and it works really well. You know, most riders, and I ask a lot of people this question, when they go to the track, they don't want to unload their bike and have to check air pressure in their forks, let alone they don't even want to check their tire pressure. They want to show up and ride. And so on that side of it, I think that's really good for the average rider. They can just show up, unload their bike, bleed the air screws, and go out and ride. And then, yeah, it works really well. They got it set up pretty good.
Husqvarna's rich history in motocross is the stuff of legend, and the 2017 FC 450 lives up to that legacy, albeit thanks to some shared technology from its sister company KTM. The big news for 2017 is that both the Husqvarna and the KTM now sport a new WP AER 48mm fork that seriously elevates the stakes in air fork performance. Easy to set up and easy to tune, the new WP fork holds up the front of an FC 450 powered by an electric start single overhead cam engine that boasts a sophisticated engine management system. The Husky's engine character can go from mild to wild with the push of a button mounted on the left handlebar, and its traction control feature helps to get the Husky's already smooth power to the ground regardless of track conditions.
The Husqvarna and the KTM aren't the same. Power-wise, they're different animals. The KTM seems real smooth. The Husky, it's got a real nice bark to it down low, and then it's very, very strong mid and top. It likes to be ridden mid to top, but for those real quick situations coming out of corners or something where you got to get over something, the down low, it's a little bit stronger than the KTM, I'd say. I'd say my favorite attribute about the FC450 is how it handles flat, kind of dry corners. The front wheel really sticks, and it doesn't really want to move around too much. You can pretty much point it where you want and it'll go there. My only complaint about the FC450 is that compared to the other bikes, it's valved a little bit softer. So for bigger jumps, and if you're really kind of slamming the bike into things, it doesn't blow through, but you can tell it's not as stiff and doesn't sit as high on the stroke as the other bikes. But for really rough tracks, or as the track gets rougher throughout the day, it does really, really well.
After a total revamp of the KX450F in 2016, Kawasaki has favored only minor updates for the Green Machine in 2017. Already content with the snappy, free-revving performance of the KX450F's double overhead cam engine, Kawasaki opted instead to work on its suspension. Up front, the KX features a Showa separate function triple air chamber air fork. And out back, its Unitrack rear suspension features a Showa piggyback shock. For 2017, Kawasaki has altered the valving of both the fork and the shock, and also fitted the shock with a lightened spring. From an engine management perspective, the KX retains Kawasaki's industry-first launch control hole shot feature, but adjusting its ECU to alter power character for varying track conditions is still accomplished by swapping various plug-in power couplers into an outlet housed near the steering head on the KX's aluminum perimeter chassis.
It was really strong in the mid to top range, more than the bottom, which is good because it's more controllable that way, and it's fast. The KX450, in my opinion, was kind of a harsh bike. Has a little more stiffness to it, and I think the rear shock was good for me, but the forks seemed like they need a little more adjustment. But all around, wasn't too bad. The Kawasaki's cornering entry was a little harder to do than most of the other bikes, but coming to mid to outside of the corner, it was pretty good, pretty strong.
KTM's 450 SXF Factory Edition is the pinnacle of the Austrian firm's motocross line. Based on the standard production 450 SXF, the Factory Edition is a cut above, boasting such extra goodies as an Akrapovic muffler, orange anodized hardware, an orange painted chromoly chassis, an aftermarket saddle, and Factory Edition graphics. Beyond that, however, the technical highlights of the Factory Edition are identical to the 450 SXF and the Husky FC450. Those include an electric start single overhead cam engine with adjustable engine mapping and traction control, and awesome Brembo brakes. Also included on the Factory Edition is the new WP AER 48mm fork.
The first thing people will know about the KTM Factory Edition is the delivery of the power. I believe the power it's hidden, but it comes out roaring once you get on the throttle. It's very easy to manhandle. It doesn't get too wild. I believe that it's smooth all the way around, and if you really wanted to get on it, you can make it roar. I noticed with the KTM chassis that it tends to be a little rigid, but you can really put the bike where you want it. As far as cornering, I feel like this bike corners really well, especially in the flat corners.
My only complaint with KTM is it was a little too fast out of the corners. So I felt myself having to really get on the front end to not wheelie coming out of corners. But other than that, everything else felt pretty good on it.
There's not a lot to say about the Suzuki RMZ 450 that hasn't already been said. 5-year-old motorcycle designs will do that, and yet the feedback has been mostly good. The Suzuki has managed to stay competitive in the 450 class by being built well the first time. Its double overhead cam engine places a heavy emphasis on rideable power over energy-sapping hit, and its small-feeling aluminum perimeter chassis gives it a light and friendly feel. Like the Kawasaki, the Suzuki's EMS boasts a hole shot system. Suzuki calls it the Suzuki Hole Shot Assist Control. But also like the Kawasaki, the RMZ's engine character must be altered by swapping plug-in power couplers rather than accessing multiple maps via a handlebar-mounted switch.
I really like the Suzuki a lot. I know it gets knocked a little bit for not being as much power. For someone like me, equivalent to a male novice level, there's no such thing as a 450 that doesn't have enough power. I mean, it's there, there's plenty of it. It's just more approachable, it's a little bit more linear off the bottom, and then it still has a nice kind of pipey mid, which I really thought was fun and punchy. I will say though, I do feel like that the power is a little bit held back probably by the stock pipe and silencer. I suspect that if you swap that out, you'd have a whole different motorcycle. I like that the Suzuki, it's a nice tight package, you know, and there's something about, just still something about Suzuki handling that it's so distinct and it stands out, especially when you're riding all the bikes back to back to back. It's, yeah, nice low bar like you were saying, and it just hooks into the turns. And to me, as a 250F rider, I can say that I feel like that bike of all the 450s is the most 250F feeling bike. If there's anything that's holding the Suzuki back more than anything, I would say it's the fork. It was sort of the same opinion with the expert and pro riders as it is with me. There's just no plushness to it. You can't really dial it out. We worked with it a little bit. You're still just going to, it's still just going to be a little bit harsh everywhere. And I don't know if that's something you could ultimately tune out, but stock for stock, back to back on a day like this, it's definitely going to hold it back.
Last redesigned in 2014, the Yamaha YZ450F has been a top contender in the 450cc class for the past few years, and the 2017 edition of the YZ is still a tough customer. Its reverse incline double overhead cam engine delivers brutish power, although it can be tamed by accessing the ECU via Yamaha's accessory GYTR handheld tuner. Despite its large feel, the YZ450F's aluminum bilateral beam chassis is designed to be as compact and mass centralizing as possible, and its Showa speed-sensitive system coil spring fork has continued to meet or exceed the performance of any air-sprung fork on the market.
It's very, very strong. It comes out very hard. I really truly believe that Yamaha has a great motor. You can get over any jump out there on the track at the blip of the throttle. It's not crazy, but there are times where it does get a little bit crazy riding the Yamaha 450 as far as throttle response and the motor responding. I believe that their fuel injection system actually is really responsive. It's really heavy going into corners. It tends to push out a little bit, but I want to say that the motor comes in play when that happens. You know, it can get you out of a sticky situation, but I tend to see myself always pushing out with the Yamaha, whereas on other bikes I'm more stable going into corners, coming in and all the way out.
So which bike came out on top of this epic comparison? Which one deserves to rightfully wear the #1 plate for 2017? For the answer to that and a whole lot more, you'll have to check out our feature stories on motorcycle.com and dirtbikes.com.